Outlander.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Lore and Loot. Today we're going to start off back in Wolverine Hall and we're going to pick up another job for the Fighters Guild. Now it's a pretty simple and mundane job. We're to deliver a few bottles of sujamma to the Dunirai Caverns, which is a glass mine located in the Ashland region. Our contact for delivery is an Altmer mage named Nellakar, who can be found inside. Well, there is no easy way to get to the mine, unfortunately. It's quite literally in the middle of nowhere. Probably the easiest and least annoying way is to get to the Foyada Mamea, either from Alderun or Balmora, and follow the path highlighted on the map here. Now, the Ashlands are home to many cliff racers, elite Kagudi, Shulks, rats, and did I mention cliff racers? The closer you get to the center of the island, the more likely you are to encounter diseased creatures as well as the more dangerous blighted creatures. So it is recommended that you bring along a few bottles of Cure Common Disease and Cure Blight Disease. If you're playing a magic type, learn the Cure Common and Cure Blight Diseases on self spells. Anyways, because this quest is rather mundane, I thought it would be a good time to talk about some current events in Morrowind, namely the three great houses in Morrowind. Now, when I say there are three great houses in Morrowind, I really mean there are three great houses with a major presence in Vardenfell. There are actually 5 great houses in Morrowind during the events of Morrowind, but only 3 of them have settlements in Vardenfell. I'll mention the other 2 houses briefly, House Dress and House Interil. We don't know much about House Dress from the in-game sources. We do know that they are the most traditional of all the houses, the one most resistant to imperial control, the one that valued its pre-tribunal traditions more than any other house. Their capital city is the city of Tyr in the Morrowind mainland. House Indoril we do know a little more about because some of its influence is present in Vardenfell. House Indoril was once the most prominent house, holding great power due to its close connection with the tribunal temple religion. Along with House Dress, House Indoril can be thought of as the most orthodox of the great houses. Like House Dress, House Indoril fiercely resisted the imperial occupation. Many members of House Indoril committed ritual suicide to symbolize their opposition to imperial rule. These events vastly reduced House Indoril's influence. But though reduced, they were not completely without power at the time of Morrowind. They remained loyal to the Tribunal Temple and supplied guards, the so-called priest soldiers, the Ordinators, to protect places of religious significance, such as Vivec. House Indoril's capital is Mournhold, located in the mainland, which you can visit during the events of the expansion pack to Morrowind Tribunal. Alright, now on to the Vardenfell great houses. First off, let's talk about House Lalu. We're most familiar with them so far in our story because we've spent the most time in their council seat, Balmora. Out of all the great houses, House Lalu was the most willing to accept imperial control, seeing it as an opportunity to seize power and expand their territory. Before the events of Morrowind, Vardenfell was not open to settlements other than some small temple settlements. However, 13 years before the events of the game, the island was opened up for exploration and settlement. House Lalu managed to get some of the best land. In fact, if you go around some of the most fertile land on the island, the Ascadian Isles region, you'll see the biggest manors and estates, most of them owned by House Lalu, which is why most counselors of the house don't actually live in Balmora, despite it being their provincial capital. As the shrewd negotiators that they are, House Lalu even has one of their own, Vedum Dren, as the Duke of the Imperial District of Vardenfell, ruling from the imperial capital, in quotations, in Vardenfell, Ebonheart. In addition, they were able to secure the Caldera mining contract, which makes the entire house incredibly wealthy. Next up, we'll talk about House Telvanni. House Telvanni's council seat is the city of Sadrith Mora, which we've been in for a while now, as we're currently taking orders from the nearby Wolverine Hall. Though Sadrith Mora is the council seat, most of the council members live in their own towns, or wizards' towers, most of them in the islands of the Azurus Coast region or on the grasslands on the mainland. Sadrith Mora itself houses the council hall, where each of the council members has a mouth which speaks for them in matters that involve the entire council. For the most part, the Telvanni councilors can't be bothered to deal with anyone else but themselves and are, for the most part, pretty self-involved. And similarly, they care little for the politics of the time, and for the most part, they just mind their own business, pursuing their own agendas. And finally, House Redoran. Of the houses in Vardenfell, Redoran is the most traditional. Not as accepting of imperial culture as the Lalu, but not indifferent like the Telvanni, the Redoran value honor and combat above cunning and magic. Because of this, they are the most loyal house on Vardenfell to the temple. Because of their comparative conservatism and their value of honor and truthfulness, they often fall behind House Lalu, whose members do not hesitate to lie, cheat, or steal their way to the top. House Redoran's council seat is the city of Alderun, which we really haven't explored much. All of the council members live here in a great hall, carved out of the shell of a giant prehistoric crab. Redorans are militaristic and will often settle disputes with traditional duels to the death. In Vardenfell, their territory is arguably the worst, as it encompasses the Ashlands in the center of the island and extend to the northwest towards the West Gash, which, while not barren, is not as conducive to farming like the Lalu Ascadian Isles region. As far as the dynamic between the three, there is a general rivalry between all of the houses, as is to be expected, with both House Redoran and Telvanni generally disliking Lalu more than each other. The Redorans because the Lalu are not honorable and are prone to underhanded tactics, and the Telvanni for similar reasons, seeing the Lalu as greedy and expansionists. The Redoran, in turn, find an ally in the Tribunal Temple, which helps them counter the expansionism of the Lalu. The Redoran also respect both the Fighters Guild and the Imperial Legion, because those two factions are also known for their honor and martial prowess. The Telvanni generally don't like anyone, but are not openly hostile to anyone, except for the Mages Guild, against whom they are directly antagonistic. In the game, outside of exploiting a bug, you cannot join more than one house. If you join one, you are excluded from joining the other two and will face a hit to your starting disposition with members of the other houses. Anyways, we've finally made it to the mines. As with all glass and ebony mines, if you're not adverse to stealing, you can make yourself a lot of money by stealing the raw glass from the veins in the mine. Anyways, Nelakar is just inside the mine over here, following the tracks, and then turning here, we can deliver the sujamma to him, and hopefully this will boost the morale of the miners working here. And when we return to Rundi, he'll reward us with a nice 500 gold. And that'll do it for today's episode of Lore and Loot. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll catch you next time.